Sweet, and let me share my screen. Let me know if you're able to view my screen.
Yes, it's loading. Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. Hey guys, this is Sudhir from Microsoft, and I've been in Microsoft from past 13 plus years, working on a different roles within Microsoft. And right now, I'm joining you from New Zealand. I work as a dev FMM here in New Zealand, and what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about how AI it gets integrated in the Azure Synapse Analytics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the basics of Synapse Analytics, in terms of what are the features that are there in Synapse Analytics. Because I think there might be a few people in the meeting who doesn't know about what is Synapse Analytics and what feature it brings. And then how adding the AI actually, completes the story of advanced analytics in a one single uniform platform. So let's get started. I have put up my social pointers on the slide deck. So if you want to connect over the social media, I would love to connect with you, and we can have conversation over there as well. So before we go ahead and talk about how we can unleash AI with Azure Synapse Analytics, let's first understand what is Azure Synapse Analytics is all about, right? Now, before Azure Synapse Analytics come into the picture, earlier than that, we have various platforms, for storing the data, for processing the data. It's either Microsoft proprietary or maybe, the open source project that we have ported onto the Azure, for example, SD Insight, right? One of the things that was missing over there is you have the different technologies, different tools available, which sometimes it's a little tedious task for any developer or any data scientist in an organization, to work through different tools and technologies, to make things happen for the businesses, right? Now with the Synapse, we basically brings all this experience in a one platform, right? Be you want to store the data, be you want to create the data pipelines, be you want to create the reports, be you want to do some advanced analytics by writing SQL queries, or maybe you want to, now want to build the machine learning models and then want to show those models to the developers, right? So it's a one single framework, which is basically captures all the advanced analytics capabilities so that the organization can focus on a one platform and, try to bring more digital transformation rather than figuring it out. Hey, which platform we're going to use for analytic purposes. And obviously, because it's on the cloud, scalability, security, compliances, everything is taken care by the Azure. Right? Now, I'm going to quickly go through some of the features, not all, just for your information. Azure Synapse Analytics, underneath has a data warehouse, which basically have dedicated and serverless SQLs, right? So if you ever store any data in a data warehouse on Azure, you must be heard about the Azure SQL data warehouse, right? So we take our products and build on top of it the various capabilities to enhance it and bring more features to the organizations, right? So that's where right now on the SQL side we have a dedicated and serverless. So depending on what kind of a workload that you're handling, either you can have a 24/7 dedicated data warehouse, which is running your enterprise workload, or you can have a serverless SQL so that, if you're running some ad hoc queries, rather than having your dedicated server running whole day, you can actually go ahead and run the compute for the time required for running that query, right? So if you want to run that query for 15-20 minutes, so you can go for the serverless SQL. Now, as I mentioned, it's suitable for any skills. So depending on whether you are having the data for your departments, where the usage is on the weekdays. However, if it is an organization where you need the compute and storage 24/7, you can have that. Or maybe it's for the enterprise, right? So all the features, all the scalabilities are available. Now, for the developers, to manage and to query the data or doing some advanced analytics and building the solutions, whether it's a data pipelines or it's whether it's a Power BI reports, we have something called Synapse Studio, which has all these features cooked in, so that you can actually focus in the one editor rather than going here and there. So what you see on my screen is an example of a SQL editor where you can actually write a SQL queries. Not only you can see the results, but as you can see, you can actually go and do some basic charting within the code editor as well. Performance, scalability, I have put up this link. Hopefully when we have the slide deck available for you, you can actually go and look into that and how we're going to make it possible. And before I move on to the next section, it is basically talks about the complete data protection. Now, because we talk about having the entire platform for advanced analytics for an enterprise, one of the questions the enterprise will come up, hey, what about the data protections, or what about the compliance of the data, right? We have the various layers just to make sure data is secure, and it basically going to be shared by the people whom you want to share, right? So it has all these features baked in. Not only that, if you want to do the data governance in the enterprise, which is nowadays pretty common, it can actually integrate with the product like Azure Purview, which we announced recently. And it can basically help you to classify your data. You can discover the data sets, which is available in the library, and then the users can use the data. Not only the core database engine, the Synapse Analytics has the real-time capabilities as well. So one of the things is it can actually connect back to the Azure Cosmos DB, so that you can actually bring the data and do some kind of an analysis on top of that, right? Now, also you can do the streaming of the events. That's where we have a streaming engine within the Synapse, which basically helps you to integrate your Event Hub or your IoT Hub, which is getting the data from your devices on the field, and it can process and store the data. More importantly, recently we announced how we can actually integrate the machine learning, right? So far what I talked about it, you have your database engine where you can store your raw data. Then you have this SQL queries capabilities, and then you have the notebook capabilities where you can actually write advanced queries and advanced analytics queries, maybe in Spark, or maybe you want to build your Power BI, right? Now, how we can actually integrate the machine learning, because that's also a somebody I think. So if you're not speaking, can you just switch off your mic so that there will be no echo and people can hear properly? Okay, cool. Thank you. So machine learning, it's basically helps the organization to basically get the insight from the data. And I'm sure because you guys are working on the data side, so you probably know what machine learning is all about. I'm not going to get into that. But the whole idea of is bringing the machine learning within the platform. How we're going to bring that into the platform? I'm going to walk you through with a demo, and you will see how easy it's going to be. If I'm a data developer and looking for how I can actually achieve AI with the Synapse, how you can do that. But if you're an experience where you say, hey, I'm an experienced data scientist, I still want to have the notebook kind of experience. I want to run my Python code for the data science process. You can actually go and do that, and you can also use something called AutoML. Now, which is basically an easy way to quickly build your machine learning models, and we're going to talk about that. But the whole idea over here is, we basically provide not only providing the one framework for the entire organizations to work on, but then the different persona within the organization can easily actually choose which one is best for them, right? Because, for example, if you look at the pre-built models, we have sentiment analysis. So if you want to use a sentiment analysis API from the Cognitive Services, you can actually go and do that rather than spending time building that model, which will take some time, right? And then, moreover, what is the maintenance cost, and And what's going to happen if the new data comes, you're going to retrain your model, deploy it again, and so on and so forth. So all this you can, live it. Now, we also have the notebook experience. As I mentioned, if you're a data science person and love to code onto the notebooks, you can actually go ahead and do that within the Synapse Studio, right? It has IntelliSense features. It has, allows you to run your code into multiple languages, not only PySpark and Scala, but you also have a C# language support, right? So if you're working on the C#, and if you think, how I'm going to write my machine learning code in C#, you can actually go and do that over here. Okay, so that's what we bringing over here. And with respect to the data and the languages, we support all the industry standards at present, but then it'll eventually will grow as well in the future. So if you're, as I mentioned, you want to do PySpark, Scala, C#, SQL, it's already there available. The pretty famous formats that we have, Parquet, .orc, and the JSON formats is all supported over there. Not only that, if you have unstructured data like your images, your audio files, video files, you can actually bring that as well and play with the data as well. Now, we also have the automatic machine learning capabilities baked in within the Synapse Studio, right? Now, this is the feature we used to have within the machine learning, right? Where we have what we used to call is AutoML, right? What it does is, instead of you as a data scientist choosing which algorithm is going to be best for my problem, and along with that, what is the hyperparameter is going to be best, right? And then what you do is you basically run that one iteration, then second iteration, and third iteration, and you keep doing it until and unless you figure it out what is the best model for you to deploy, right? Now, it'll take maybe days. It may take maybe weeks, months, depending on how complicated your model is and how many times you're running, right? And the manual intervention is required because every time you need to look into the data, and then you need to look into the report, what is the true positive, false positive, and so on and so forth, right? Now, with the automated machine learning, what it does is for you is you just provide the data and provides what kind of a data science algorithm you want to apply on that, whether it's going to be classification or it's going to be regressions, or you want to do some forecasting. And then behind the scenes, it basically starts running the process of choosing multiple algorithms with multiple hyperparameters and do all these permutations and combination for you. And then at the end of the day, it basically gives you the full report and tells you which is the best model for you, right? So now, instead of you sitting in front of a computer, you can actually go and do that. Now, that feature is from the machine learning, but what we did is we basically bring that experience seamlessly within this Synapse Studio so that you don't have to go into the machine learning UI, right? So that's the experience, and I'm going to show you the demo of that as well. All right. Now this is another example of analyzing a data which is you store in a database or in a data warehouse, I would say, because we're talking about Azure Synapse Analytics, right? Now, what happens today is, let's say if you store some data in your SQL data warehouse, and if you want to do some kind of prediction on the data, right? So what you have to do is you actually gonna write a code. Maybe it's a .NET application, or maybe it's your Python code which you're gonna run in a notebook. You basically get the data and send this data into your models, which is deployed in some server, right? Now, what if I want to say, can we get that ability to analyze my data, or maybe look into the prediction of the data within the boundary of my data warehouse, so that my data doesn't need to go out of my data warehouse? Can I go ahead and do that, right? The answer is with the Synapse is yes, you can actually go ahead and do that. And we're going to look into that, how we make it possible behind the scenes for you guys. And this is democratizing the predictions to all. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, you can connect with any of your tools at the top, and then you can connect your SQL-like queries, and underneath it's basically gonna talk to the Synapse SQL and get the prediction out to you. Okay, not a time for a question, because before that we're gonna look into the demo, get the understanding of the product much better, and then probably we'll come back to the question. So I would say, and over here, and let me just go my browser. Okay. Now, if you don't know how you can actually set up the Azure Synapse Analytics, pretty easy. You can just go and say, I want to create a resource, and just search for the Azure Synapse. And then you're probably gonna select the Azure Synapse Analytics, provide all the information, and then you can actually go ahead and say create. Now, once you create that, how it's gonna look like, I've already created. So I just directly go back onto my Synapse workspace. So this is my Synapse workspace, right? And as you can see over here, it basically gives me my workspace web URL or your Synapse Studio, right? I can open it. Now, before that, you can actually see, I can actually go ahead and create a dedicated SQL pool. If I scroll down, I can have the serverless or maybe a dedicated SQL pool, which I was talking about earlier. And if I'm running my Spark workloads in a notebook, I can actually go ahead and create a pool for that as well, right? Now let's go ahead and open this Synapse Studio. So once I open that, this is where it's going to take me. Probably it's going to take me to the home, and then it has various tabs on the left-hand side. So I'll probably going to go onto the data first, right? Now, I'm not going to talk about the database features, or I'm not going to talk about the Synapse data pipeline or the Power BI. But what I'm going to talk about is the specific feature, which is machine learning, right? Now, over here, what you can see is I have a table which says the customer feedback. And if I look on to the data and just say run the script, probably hide that one. Okay. So now you can see I have some customer information, and I got some topics and the comments as well, right? You can assume this as a feedback. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually do some sentiment analysis on the data, right? Now with the Synapse, what I can do is I can actually click on this table, and I can say go to the machine learning, and I can say enrich with existing model, or I can say enrich with a new model. So if I say enrich with a new model, it's basically going to take me to my machine learning workspace, which we're going to come back into the later stage. But now I'm just going to say enrich with the existing model, which is my Azure Cognitive Services model, which is already available, right? Now, at this point of time, we're supporting two models. Either you can do anomaly detector, or you can do text analytics. So I'll just select the text analytics over here and say continue to it, right? So now, as you can see, it was asking me which Azure Cognitive Services account that you want to create. So I've already created an account, which is the text and sentiment analysis account, which I've already created. So it's basically listed. So I'll just go ahead and select, right? Because it's in my subscription, it's already get that. And then it was asking me to select the keyword link services, right? Now, because it's the Cognitive Services APIs, whenever I'm going to make a call to the Cognitive Services, it's basically going to ask for the authentication, right? Now, even in the Azure services, we follow the best practices, and instead of you just providing the plain keys and the secrets over here, we wanted to create a keyword link services, right? So I've already created over here, but then if you are new, you can actually go and say manage, and over here I should have link services, and I can say new, and then I can search for the keyword. Okay. So you can create a Azure keyword, right? And you can actually go ahead and select the Azure keyword, which I'm already created. It basically stores the key information of the service, right? The API that I'm going to use. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and show that. If I cancel that, go back to my portal, go back to the resource group, and I'll just go to my keyboard over here. If I go to the secrets, and I have copied that the primary key of the Cognitive Services API and store it into my keyboard, right? So I'm going to use this because that's the secret name. So I'll go back over here. And once I create the link services, which is pointing to my Azure keyword services, I'll go back onto the data and say with the existing model, text analytics, continue. And now select my Cognitive Services account, and it's asking me from where you're going to get the keys for the authentication. I'm going to say I'm going to get from my Azure keyword, which is basically connected via this link services. And then the secret name is this one. And let's continue. So now it was asking me the language. Obviously, it's an English language, so I just go select that. But then if you have a different language on which you want to do the sentiment analysis, you can select that. And go to the text column and select the column on which you want to do sentiments analysis, right? So I'll select my comment over here, and I'm going to say open my notebook. And now you can see it basically writes the code which is required to run the sentiment analysis over here. So this is, we are importing some libraries, which is pretty straightforward. Now, while it's running, actually it's going to spin up my Spark code because it requires compute to run this code. Now over here, you can see it basically gets the entire code for me, right? So it's basically getting the service key, getting the data, and then calling the functions to do the sentiment analysis, right? And then just displaying the data as a result over here. So while it's doing that, I should have executed earlier. Let me see if I have that result. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So now you can see I have the comments over here, and it basically gives me what is the sentiment of that comment, right? And if there's any warnings or any error message, I will get it over here, right? But in this case, I have all the sentiments analysis come back from the Cognitive Services, and it gives me back that information. Now, if I want to analyze this information in a chart, I can actually go and do that, right? So I'll click on the chart. I can play around these parameters on the right-hand side and look on to the information in a chart right then and there, okay? So that's how it's easy. You know, if you have a data, you want to do some kind of analysis, you can actually go and do that, okay? It says run book to start a new session. Let me just go back. It's still starting, so that's okay. So I hope you will get an understanding of how you can actually use the Cognitive Services within the Synapse Analytics and do the sentiment analysis, and as well as you can do anomaly detector as well, right? Now the next one is, now let's take an example of two persona in an organization, right? So generally we have a data scientist and we also have the data developer who want to use those models, okay? So we have these two personas. One is developer and one is a data scientist, right? So the job of the data scientist is to build the machine learning models and make it available. Now, once it's available, then the data developer is going to come and basically going to leverage that model against the raw data that has been stored in a data warehouse, right? So we're going to look into both the personas over here, okay? So the first thing is, let's go ahead and talk about the data scientist. So I have some of my test data over here, New York taxi data, and what this contains is, I'll run this data, right? Pretty simple data, which basically gives me the information about the trip. Basically, when what is the trip distance, what is the trip time in seconds, pickup times, how many passenger types, fare amount, and whether the driver get a tip or not. Right. So I have this data as a data scientist, and now my job is to build the machine learning model. So one of the approach that I have is I can actually go ahead and say develop, and I can actually go ahead and start creating my new notebook, right? And I can attach to my Spark pool, and then I can select the language that I'm comfortable with. Right? So as you can see, I have C#, Scala, Spark SQL, Python, all the supported libraries or the languages are here, which I can use to build my machine learning model as a data scientist, right? Now, remember, in the presentation, we talk about the AutoML, right? So rather than me building the entire code, let me just leverage the functionality of automated machine learning over here, okay? So I'll go back to New York Taxi, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a machine learning model, okay? So if you don't have a machine learning workspace, you can create a machine learning workspace. I've already have it. I'll just select that, and I'm going to say, that's going to be the global AI boot camp. And I'll just copy this. And I'm going to say, just name that this model as this one. Okay. So now it was asking me, what is your target column? So I'm going to say, let's say the fare amount. Okay. And I'm going to just continue with that. So now, as you can see, if you already did the automated machine learning in the Azure Machine Learning Services, you will see the look and feel is the same, right? So now we need to choose a model type, right? So I can select whether I'm going to do classification, regression, or a time series. Now, because I have a numeric value, which is my fare amount, which I'm going to predict. So it's going to be a regression problem. So I'll just select that and say continue. Right? I can select, what's going to be the primary metric. So I'll just select a Spearman correlation. I can select what is the training job time and how many concurrent iteration can run at given point of time. All right. So that is just to make sure that, we are not doing any bottleneck on the resources, right? And then I can actually go ahead and define the ONNX, Open Neural Network Exchange Model Compatibility, okay? So by default is disabled. Let me just go ahead and enable, and I'll tell you what this feature does it, okay? So now I can create run, or I can actually open into the notebook to look into the code. So let's go ahead and open it in a notebook, and let's just go ahead and walk through with the code. So now you can see, as a data scientist, I get the entire code to run the automated machine learning from a notebook experience. Okay? So now here, the first thing is obviously get the libraries. Okay, so this is because you can see I've already have some Spark application which is running. And what I can do is I can go on the monitors and go to the Spark application. And let me see. Just go ahead and cancel that. Okay. So, I mean, I have did it because it's a demo environment, but when you are working in the enterprise, don't do that without looking into, what are the jobs that are running, because you might have end up killing your job, which is half run, or maybe which somebody's already running for you, and then unintentionally you just killed it. Don't do that. Just be make sure. Okay. So now I hope the resources should be available over here. And while it's doing, let's go ahead and have a look onto the code over here. Okay. So the first step is obviously getting the reference of the library that I'm going to use over here. I am providing my Azure Machine Learning Workspace configuration, which is my subscription ID, resource group, workspace name, and it's going to create a new experiment for me. So I'll provide that. I'm getting the data, as you can see over here. And then over here, I basically providing the AutoML configuration, right? As you can see, regression task, it gets the training data, what is the label column, and then over here you can next compatible model is equal to true. By default, it's going to be false. So if you want to leverage that, you need to make sure that you make it as a true, right? Otherwise, you're going to have your normal model, which is your pickle file, right? Now, another thing that I'm going to do over here is quickly I'll do a one cheat, which is iteration. I'm going to reduce the iteration because by default, if you don't define the iteration, I think default is 1000 iteration is going to run. So I don't want you to wait for 1000 iterations to get completed. So that's why I'm just going to reduce it to 5. So that will quickly run that. Okay. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to run the experiment. And when the experiment is done, what it's going to do is it's basically going to register my ONX model, right? So I have all these pieces of code available for me, so you don't have to write it, right? But if you want to modify, you can actually go and do that. Now, what I'm going to do over here is the first cell is done. Second, I'll quickly run it. And once it's done, let's run the third one, get the data, and provide my AutoML configuration. Okay, while it's running, it's a good if I just go back on my workspace and just go ahead and open my machine learning workspace as well. And again, I'll just say launch the studio. And let's get over here in the experiment page. Okay, so that's done. And now passing the AutoML configuration. Okay, and let's go ahead and run the experiment. And the cell number 6 is basically just referring, getting me the reference of the ID when it's going to experiment. It's still running, and I think I should have the experiment over there. Let me just come back. There you go. So you can see the global AI bootcamp. So the experiment is created, and very soon it's going to start it. So it's going to running on the Azure Debug code, and then just go ahead and okay, it's ready, and then should get the run ID. All right. And if I go back onto my machine learning and refresh it, so now you can see it's running. So if I go and look onto the models, it's still running. So let it just go ahead and execute the next one. So it's gonna wait for the experiment to complete. So remember, we did the 5 iterations. So it should not take much time. Come up quickly. So now you can see there are 2 iterations which has been started, because remember in the configuration we defined that we're going to run 2 iterations at the same time, right? So if I refresh it, yeah, it started completing, and it will be get done real quick because we just provided 5. Okay, while it's doing that, let me just come back over here. What it's gonna do is over here, as I mentioned, it's basically gonna log my Open Neural Network Exchange model. Now, what is this ONX is all about? Let me just quickly walk you through what it is and how it's gonna basically help in this particular scenario where scientists can do something, and then it can easily be that model can easily be stored in a data warehouse, and then the database developer can actually run that. I'll just run from the slide. current slide. This is actually a reality for the machine learning in every big organization, right? You have a lot of training framework, right? And what happens is the other side is you have a deployment target, right? CPU, GPU, FPGA, NPU, right? And you have to maintain, different frameworks and their respective targets, the models, and which is a very tedious task, right? And time consuming as well, right? Now that's where the open neural network exchange come into the picture, right? Now what it says is any model that you have, you can actually go and convert that into the ONNX format, and then this you can actually go and deploy in any of these hardware that are available. Yeah, obviously there will be ONNX runtime engine which is going to run. Okay. This is just to give you an example of we are also running the ONNX in the Microsoft in the various platform and the products as well. One of the thing is I want to show you. So these are some numbers which basically shows the benefit of ONNX in our product. Yeah. So if you want to convert your existing model in a ONNX, you can actually go ahead and convert that as well. Or if you want to need to get the existing models, we have something called ONNX Model Zoo. You can actually get that ONNX model from there. Or maybe if you're using the custom vision or automated machine learning, which basically out of the box provides the ONNX model, you can actually go ahead and one of the examples that we have seen is automated ML, right? Remember when we said enable the ONNX compatibility model, it basically gives me that format, right? So that basically makes life easier for the data scientists, to basically transform the model and make it available in any of the hardware. So let me just quickly exit. A very short intro because we have less time. So let's go back on the notebook over here, and I should have everything completed. Okay, so as you can see, everything is completed, and this algorithm gives me the better accuracy. So I'll go that, and if I go on to the outputs and go into the outputs, right? So now you can see this is generally your pickle file, your machine learning model, right? Now because I enable the ONNX options, it basically also gives you the model.onx file as well. Okay, and what it also does is it basically gonna register that model over here. That's your model, right? Remember we give the name of it, right? And this is the version of it. Okay. So now, as a data scientist, what I did is I basically prepare my data sets. I give it to the AutoML and say, just go ahead and convert it into the ONNX model and just register that model so that developers or the data analysis in my team can actually go ahead and leverage that model. Okay. So my job is done as a data scientist. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come as a database developer. And I just go into my table. There you go. And I'll go into the machine learning. And I'm going to say enrich the data with the existing model. So it's going to look for the machine learning workspace. Now, because I've already have, it's going to connect to that. And now you can see it basically says, okay, you basically connected with the these are the models which you have registered. So which one you want to connect? So you can say, okay, this one I want to connect. Continue. Okay. So you got the error. It basically says it can't connect to the database because I think this is what I do just to save some dollars to actually pause my service if I'm not using, and which is a good practice. I would highly recommend if you're not using any of the Azure resources, always just either shut down or make put it in a pause state. So it's gonna resume it. In the meantime, what you can do is once you have this ONNX model, if you want to look inside the ONNX model, how it's going to look like, what you can do is you can actually go ahead and open the ONX viewer, which you can download from the internet. And here you can see the definition of the file, right? So you can see it has all the columns, the New York taxi column, the tip, the payment type. These are my input column for my model, right? Passenger count, pickup time when, and time second, right? And then at the end, it basically gives me a variable, which is the prediction. Okay. And this is also helpful, sometimes you don't know what is the variable name which ONX model is going to give you out, or maybe what is the input column it's taking. You can actually go and use the viewer, something like this, to basically look into what's going inside into the model and what's coming out from that. Okay, let's go back and see if is it resuming? If anyone have any question, they can unmute. I think you guys can unmute yourself if you have any question, but not if you can just put in a Q&A. I can quickly look if I have any questions in a Q&A. Is the machine learning is available only on top of the Spark tables? Mohit, the answer is I have shown you the scenario where you can actually, as a data scientist, when you're building models, you can actually go and do that. But for example, with the cognitive services, once you have the code out and you want to say, hey, I want to connect the data which is there on my data warehouse, you're probably going to write a little bit of piece of code to basically get the data, and you should be able to do it, right? Similarly, for the data scientists, when I'm working with my data sets, generally, I'll create my own data sets and do the training of the models and then deploy it. But again, if you want to connect any other source, then you have to write a piece of code. But at this point of time, your observation is correct, Mohit. Okay, let's go back. And hopefully, services should not take that much of time. Continue. Okay, it's still coming up. Okay, lesson learned. Next time onwards, whenever I'm going to give this session, I should either start my server before I start my demo or actually my presentation. I can actually, in the meantime, when it's running, I can actually go ahead and tell you what's going to happen behind the scenes, right? So what's going to happen over here is, because I've connected to one of the ONX model, right? It's basically going to ask me to do the mapping of the column, right? So what are the columns is going to take the input. Now, because I have my New York taxi table, and then there's an input table, right? So remember in the ONX here, we see that these are the input columns, which is expected. So I'm going to do these two mappings. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to define what is the output variable is going to be and what is the data type of it, right? Now, once I define with that, I can actually go and run the process. And what it's going to do is it's basically going to take my ONX model, convert it into the hexadecimal, and then it's basically going to store that model into my database. Okay. How it's going to look like? I'm going to show you a scenario which I used to do when this particular feature was in preview earlier. And this is how it used to look like. Okay. So the ONX model that you have seen, I have actually converted that ONX model into the in a binary format. And this is the binary format of it. Okay. Now, you don't need to require this because we do heavy lifting for you now. Okay. But this is just for your FYI, what's happening behind the scenes. Okay. So this is the var binary which comes. And then what I can do is I can create a model table. And as you can see, this is the model binary format in a var binary data type. And somewhere in the down, I'm going to write an insert query. There you go. So you can see I'm going to insert into the column model binary, and this is the variable which holds the hexadecimal, right? And once you're done with that, I'm going to do the predictions out of it. So this is what's going to happen, and it should come up now. Okay, I have enough credits, so I believe it should be okay. Okay, I can take some more questions while it's coming up. Or maybe I should have existing notebook running somewhere, which I can show. Let's see. It should be some queries. Let's see. Yeah, I think I can take some questions in the meantime while it's the server is coming up. Do I have any questions? Okay, I have a question from Dave. I need to search particular word in an email and its value. Like suppose someone written in mail, my invoice number is XXX and phone number is XXX. I need to find out such type of value XXX and keep it somewhere. Should I use text analysis of Azure, or there are any other way to do it? What should be best practices to achieve this? Okay, now the text analytics may be overkill for you because you just need the invoice number. Now, once you get this data, I don't know how you're getting this data. If it is you're getting in a one particular, let's say in a column, let's say you have a CSV file and you have multiple columns, and one of the columns have the comment which has the invoice numbers in it. You can actually go ahead and use some SQL functions, to find out that information. Oh no, it will be a simple mail. Got it. Yeah, so you're probably going to look for the entity over here, right, which is your invoice number. So I'm probably going to, instead of text analytics, you can try with that, or maybe you can look for the entity search API in the Cognitive Services to achieve the task. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, Rajiv. And okay, this I've answered. This I've answered. Cool. Let's go back. No event, and it should be up now. Let's go back and see if it's up or not. Let's see, machine learning, that's existing model. Okay, no worries. I can run that, but then it's not, the workspace is not going to be able to connect here. Where can I? Okay, I stored all this information in my GitHub repo. So let me just figure it out if I have this information in my GitHub repo. Repositories. And go to my developer branch and SQL scripts. Yeah, this might not be a great experience, but what I want to show you is, it's basically, it is the same query. As you can see, it basically do the typecasting of the columns. And then what it does is somewhere it's basically going to use the predict function. There you go, predict model, which I can show you from my another workbook. Yeah, over here. So once you declare the model, which you're probably going to get, which is stored into a table, and then you can define that you want to get that. And then when you're going to do the prediction on the data, you're probably going to say, I'm going to use the predict function, and this is the model. And the another parameter that you're going to pass is the data, right? So what I did over here is I basically stored the data in a temporary variable, and then basically take this data into that model, against this model, and then gives me the output in this variable. And I can actually then go ahead and look into the data. So that's how it's going to do it. This is strange that is taking time to get the server up and running. It should not take that much of time. This is, yeah, this also looks good to me. And I have some dollars as well. Okay. Let's see if it comes back. If not, then I won't take much time, guys. I'll just go ahead and jump off on the questions. Yeah. And probably I'll send you some resources to have a look into that rather than doing debugging over there. Cool. So let's go ahead and take the question. Is it the question from Arpan Mukherjee? I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Is it possible to use AutoML feature all of the Synapse Studio? If yes, how? Arpan, yes. The answer is yes, because this is a feature of Azure Machine Learning Services. So if I go on to my Azure Machine Learning workspace, and I can actually say automated ML, I can say new automated ML, and now you can see I can select my data set, and then I can do the same thing, like selecting the which kind of problem that I'm solving, classification, regression, or forecasting, and then I can run the automated ML. So it's available in the Azure Machine Learning Services as well. Okay, are you going to share this recording? I think, yeah, okay, that has been answered. Cool. Look, I don't think it's good to wait. This will come back. It is come back. So we have 2-3 minutes. Let's go ahead and make this run. We are lucky, I believe. So let's go ahead and select the workspace and say continue. And now it's going to connect to my table and my model and ask me to do the mapping. As you can see over here, it automatically does that for me, which is sweet. And I can say, okay, let's continue that. And it was asking me to give a name of this stored procedure. So I'm going to say global AI demo. That's going to be the SP name. And then I'm going to say, create a new table to store the machine learning model. So I'm going to say global AI model tables. And I'm going to say deploy model plus open the script. And once you notice over here, it's basically going to download the model, convert the ONNX into the hexadecimal, and then store it. As you can see, it's uploading the model into my storage. Then it's going to convert it into the hexadecimal, and then going to store it into my table. And then it's going to open the script for me. As you can see, it's now deploying the model into the AI model table. And pretty soon I have my scripts. A SQL query is generated. I can close this. Or did I close the Sorry about that. Just it should be so good. I'll just close all other windows. So I'm just saving everything. That's fine. Let me go back over here. JSON. Okay, it didn't come up everything, which is a little weird. Okay, I think it'll be good if I share you the link. You can try it on your own. But the whole idea is, it'll generate the script for you to actually look into the model and how you can run the query against the model. Yeah. So I just want to show this piece. So once we get the script, so this is gonna be the script. As you can see, it's gonna get the data into a temporary data set, and then it basically gonna then query the data from the first it's gonna get the model, and this is the table where it's storing all the models in a binary format, as you can see. So if I search all the column that we have, so what that means is you can have actually multiple models stored in your data warehouse table, and then you can choose which model you want to run against with the data. So if I just say select star from the AML models, as you can see, it has ID, name, description, the version of the model, and the framework and the model itself in a binary format, which I showed you earlier, right? So all this heavy lifting, we do it for you. You don't have to be worried about it. And then I'm just passing the model name and the data, and what is the runtime engine behind the scenes it's gonna use, which is the Open Neural Network Exchange, and it's just gonna give me this data back. So I'm gonna run this query just to show you how the outcome is going to look like. And it's not going to take much time because data is there in the data warehouse. The model is also there, and everything is going to happen in the data warehouse. So your data is not traveling outside the data warehouse boundary. And here you can see the variable out1 is the prediction, right? So this is the fair amount, which is we are getting from the data. And if you want to compare, you can see it's pretty much very close, the predictions, right? So cool. That's all I want to show you. So over to you guys. Sorry, I've just taken a few minutes from your lunch.
Sudhir, we have a few questions again, if time permits.
Okay. Yep. So Jaya Chandran, I'll probably going to share my screen so that everybody can see the question as well on my screen. The question is, if I missed the first two sessions joined just now, could you please let us know if Azure subscription password share for hands-on? Probably this is question for the event organizer, not for me.
Yes. So Sudhir, there is one question just above that by Mohit.
Okay.
Yeah.
A quick question: is direct integration of Azure Machine Learning available for dedicated pool? What do you mean by that, Mohit? I mean, because what I'm running is on the dedicated the Spark pool. Everything is passing from here to the Azure Machine Learning, all the jobs and everything, right? Which is behind the scenes running on the Spark pool. So, if you can just elaborate a little more, I think it'll be good. The second question is like selecting a table and applying a model on some columns.
No, I believe Mohit has extended that question in the second part, like what he wants to.
Okay. So what's going to happen is for the dedicated, the question is direct integration of Azure Machine available for dedicated pool. Yes, like selecting a table and apply a model on the same columns. Now, the first time, you need to have a dedicated pool, but once you have your machine learning models available in the table, once you have your data is also available, I think when you're going to do the query, you can actually should be able to do from the serverless as well. I haven't tried that, Mohit, but I think that's a good scenario to test it out. But I think it should be possible because both the information available in my database. So the serverless should also be work actually.
So Sudhir, will it be okay if I just talk to you for a minute? I just want to explain my scenario.
Sure. Since it's probably gonna lunchtime, I don't want to hold other people. So guys, if you have a questions, you can feel free to unmute or maybe listen our conversation. Happy to answer any question. But I think otherwise you can take a break, lunch break. Yeah, go ahead, Mohit.
Hey, thank you. So first of all, Sudhir, thank you so much. Very good session. Lots of learning that I got. A lot of things I got to know.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sure. So just one thing. So what you are saying is that in case if I have to use AutoML, one thing is that I can go and first of all create a machine learning model. Step number 2, I can use it directly inside the Spark pools. Is that the correct assumption? I can create an existing model and straight away use that in the Spark pool.
So when you're using for this Spark pool, you're saying for creating the model, or you want to for executing the model, for training the model or executing?
For executing the model. So it's already created in the Azure ML, and I can directly use that. Connect my Azure ML to Synapse and straight away go and use that in Spark pool.
Okay, so Mohit, think about this, right? So you have your model register into the Azure machine learning. You haven't deployed that, right? Once you go to the machine learning model, once you deploy that, it will be available as an API for you, right? So you can then call from your notebook. Either you use Python, Scala, whatever you're using, you can make a call and then get it done like we do earlier, right? Yeah. The feature that we have added is now you can actually have this model stored in your data warehouse for any reason if you want to do it, right? Now, you can actually store that model into that, and your database developer or your business analysis, while they're writing a query, they can actually go and use that model. So then their data does not need to travel outside the data warehouse, or which will probably add a latency of the data travel, right? So that will help in that scenario for the DBAs or business analysis, to work with the machine learning model. But as a data scientist, you can play either way because you know both the worlds, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. So a great point. So what exactly would be the performance of this? Is this actually a REST API call being made from the dedicated pool to the model and then getting the response back? Or because as I see it, dedicated pool does not have its own ML capability. So is basically the data, it's basically a REST API call that is being made. If that is the case, then what will be the performance impact in terms of query?
Yeah, so that's the 2 points, right? So when we talk about the ONX models, right? what we are saying is behind the scenes, we have this capability add-in where we understand that the model is an ONX format. And what we do is we basically run the ONX engine runtime in the data warehouse environment to make the prediction happen. Now, in this scenario, if you see my screen over here, the data is not going to the machine learning model because your model is sitting into the data warehouse itself. Okay, that's a point number one. Okay, and it's happening because of this open neural network exchange model format. Okay, that's make it possible. Okay, now if you have your model available in machine learning, let's say we haven't stored this data, and what I want to do is I still want to create my notebooks, and I want to call my machine learning models from my notebook. So what I can do is I can create a new cell, and I can actually go ahead and write a code which basically goes to the machine learning server where my model is deployed, be it an ACI or it's an AKS, whatever it is. Send the data over there and let the prediction happens over there and get the response back, right? So you can obviously, because your data is traveling from one service to another service, right? You will get a little bit of latency as compared to when you're doing the analysis of the prediction within the data warehouse itself.
Okay. So the for SQL data warehouse or basically dedicated pool, it has to be there within the SQL data warehouse itself, so that so data does not go out.
Yeah. So now we are talking about this scenario. Okay. Now here we basically talks about two types: dedicated pool and the serverless pool that we have, right? So dedicated pool is going to work as you mentioned, and which you can see on my screen, is going to work flawlessly because your server is 24/7 up and running, right? Now, when we're going to use the built-in, which is your serverless one, right? I assume that it should work as well because both the information is there in my database. So if I run with the serverless, there it gives me error. Hang on a sec. Incorrect filters. Did I miss something over here? Let's see. So you can get this problem. You see, the query reference and object that is not supported. So now you probably you can actually go ahead and create a table and store the data instead of create table. I think that's where it's falling. So what I can say is, I'm just going to give a shot over here. I hope you'll be okay with that.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, no, with the servlet, it's not. I can do a little bit of research on that, Mohit, and we can connect offline as well. I can share my email address over here. I think that's what your question was, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm just trying to understand that if we have a model, let's say built into Azure ML, in case of Spark Pool, is it going? So the data is kind of there is a latency added because we are making a call directly, and because there is no ONNX model which is stored inside Spark and the Spark Pool. But in case of as soon as we come to a dedicated pool, it's the model is available inside SQL DW, and we are able to make the call. So that should be much faster. I'm just trying to analyze, what could be the performance impact if we kind of embed this prediction into, into various computes.
Yeah, my hunch is because it's going to be faster when you're going to have it into the data warehouse itself, because the data travel time is it's not going to be there, because your service doesn't need to call from Synapse to the Azure machine learning service. So that call you're avoiding, and hence I'm expecting the latency should be less over here.
Okay, maybe you'll just do some performance testing out of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah.
Sure. That's
Cool.
that's all I wanted to check with you. Thank you so much once again.
No worries. You're most welcome. I have put my email address. So if you have any further queries, feel free to just drop me a note, man. Happy to have a conversation.
Sure.
Cool.
I'll do that. Thank you.
You're most welcome.